Habibi Fahodi and straight black pride, brothers and sisters. This is your brother, DC Radical One, with another radical report. And today we will discuss Julius Malema and the EFF's hidden benefactor. And we talked earlier this week, well, I guess it'll be last week by the time you hear this, about Julius Malema and his opposition to the Ugandan bill and his advocacy for LGBT in Africa. And that made me, I had received some information that I feel is pertinent to the discussion because many people were shocked and saddened and disappointed in Malema's stance as far as him being pro LGBT. Now, of course, these people have not been following closely Mr. Malema, who several years ago, and if I'm not mistaken, while Baba Robert Mugabe was still alive, was advocating LGBT and stating that there's nothing wrong with Africans being homosexual. In fact, he said that, if you want to be gay, be gay. And we will look at that clip in a moment. But first, we're going to meet a gentleman that very few people know about. And the fact that this person exists and is helping to fund the economic freedom fighters will give us some insight into why Mr. Malema is taking the stance that he is taking. So we're going to first look at this article from the National Vanguard. I've seen it at a couple of other outlets, and it states, "Meet the Jewish billionaire who controls the media and quote unquote opposition parties in South Africa." Now, this is an old article. This is from January 2019. And we're going to go through part of it. It says, "Some might call Nathan Kirsh the George Soros of Africa." Let's stick a pin in that comment. "Yet another international stateless billionaire," it says here, Jew, "who funds radical, quote unquote, anti-white socialist causes, such as South Africa's economic freedom fighters led by Julius Malema, while his family also exerts enormous control over Prime Media, the largest media conglomerate in South Africa." And it says here, two opposition parties, the EFF and the Democratic Alliance, DA, together with the DA's MP advocate Glenys Breitenbach, are being funded by Nathan Kirsh, the director and owner of Israel's Magal Security Systems, which is complicit in the construction of Israel's illegal apartheid wall. Lord Renwick of Clifton, who is a friend of Kirsh, met the EFF in London in 2015. Let's stop right there for a moment. So they're saying here that this billionaire, Nathan Kirsh, who they liken unto George Soros, is actually the primary funder of the economic freedom fighters. So a small hat is funding the EFF in the same way that a small hat was funding Black Lives Matter here, and they also were promoting the rainbow agenda and here in America, while masquerading as revolutionaries in the same manner that EFF is masquerading as revolutionaries and pushing LGBT. All right, we got that covered. Now, it should be noted that Breitenbach case was funded through the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, a foundation of Mr. de Klerk, South Africa's last apartheid president. Kirsch thought such an ingenious funding of Breitenbach would not be detected. Moreover, cases against the government are funded through endowment funds from Kirsch and Lord Renwick. It should be clear now why the EFF is ganging up with the DA in hung metros of JHB and Schwane. Nathan Kirch left South Africa in 1986 to settle in Swaziland in the mid 1980s. At the time of his departure, he had benefited greatly from apartheid. He is now a resident of New York and London, where he is teaming up with Lord Renwick, a blesser of the EFF, who is hell bent on pushing regime change in South Africa. Mago Security Systems was founded in 1969 as a Department of Israel Aerospace Industries. In 1984, Mago Security Systems was established as a private company with some shares still held by IAI, but with 24.2% of Mago Security Systems shares being held by Nathan Kirsch through holdings in Mirror Mag and Kai Corporation. Both of the companies are registered in Liberia. Now that's interesting. The 24.2% stake in Mago Security Systems makes Nathan Kirsch its largest shareholder. Kirsch is also the director of the company. Nathan Kirsch, Mago Security Systems, in September 2002, won 80% of the tenders, totaling 19 million US dollars, published by the Israeli Ministry of Defense to install detection systems along 150 kilometers of Israel's apartheid wall in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian West Bank. Israel's apartheid wall was deemed illegal by the International Court of Justice in 2004, thus making Mago Security Systems and its founder, Nathan Kirsch, complicit in criminal activity. This is interesting. Following the 2004 ruling by the ICJ, two Danish companies, the Danske Bank and the Pensioner Bank, both decided to withdraw all investments from Mago Security Systems. How can the EFF, the DA, and the DA's MP accept monies from a criminal, Nathan Kirsch? Wow, that's a good question. EFF, the DA, and the then Democratic Alliance's parliamentary candidate, Glenys Breitenbach, who received $6.3 million from Nathan Kirsch, are basically being funded off of criminal Israeli activity. How can the DA and the gang expect voters to support them if they are receiving money that was made off the oppression of Palestinian people? First, it's a moral question, but secondly, the DA and the EFF will most definitely be constrained by their funder to toe a pro-Israeli agenda. A pro-Israeli agenda is an anti-Palestinian, anti-human rights agenda. In addition, the EFF and the DA will be constrained by their funder to oppose the progressive boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel campaign. This is interesting. The DA and EFF are basically lapdogs of an Israeli imperialist agenda, a government which pursues apartheid policies in the 21st century. And they're saying they're doing that just in a different place. Prime Media, often a critic of the ANC, is owned by the brother of Nathan Kirsch, Mr. Issy Kirsch. Nathan Kirsch's nephew, William Kirsch, is the CEO of Prime Media. We wonder whether Prime Media and the Lead Essay campaign will come out definitively condemning Nathan Kirsch's involvement in Israel's illegal apartheid wall and his backing of the EFF through Lord Renwick and the DA through profits made from criminal Israeli activity. This is interesting. So, it seems here that we have some definitive proof of the connections between Mr. Kirsch and the EFF. Reading further into the article, it states that the writer of this piece above is clearly disillusioned to find that the promised quote-unquote socialist revolution in South Africa headed by the ANC with support from the EFF and DA, is being controlled one way or another by the vast wealth of this pro-Zionist Jew who doesn't even live in South Africa. And with the Jewish control of the mainstream media in South Africa through the Kirsh family hand in prime media, it's no wonder that all the black leadership, from President Ramaphosa down to quote-unquote radical Julius Malema, are all beholden to Jewish money and influence. This is the same political tightrope that Jews are playing across the globe as they fund radical socialist causes which naturally oppose the brutal Zionist regime in Israel. All right, this is interesting. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the About Us section of the EFF and see if it can tell us anything in addition to what we've read here. And as we go here, it says background of the economic freedom fighters. The economic freedom fighters is a radical and militant economic emancipation movement formed in the year 2013 with the aim of bringing together revolutionary militant activists, community-based organizations, as well as lobby groups under the umbrella of political party pursuing the struggle for economic emancipation. Let's put a pin in that. The EFF is an anti-imperialist and leftist movement with an internationalist outlook anchored by populist grassroots formations and struggles. The political party has thus drawn inspiration from broad Marxist-Leninist traditional school of thought in their analysis of state, imperialism, culture, class contradictions in every society. Let's stop right there. Now, for those of us who are well studied, we understand that that Mr. Marx and the intellectual architects of socialism / communism are all small hats. So right here, within the background of the economic freedom fighters, we see the connection between the ideology of the economic freedom fighters and the small hats. So their very ideology emerges out of the intellectualism of small hattism, right? And anyone who has seen, oh wow, I can't think of the name of the video, but anyone who there's a video that gives us the history of the so-called Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, and the connections between the hats and that, and all of the architects of that whole ideology being small hats, right? So now we understand why this man is called the Soros of South Africa and why the ideology looks so similar. So we're getting to see now that so-called revolutionaries in the black community in various places are being placed by small hats to push agendas that are against the interests of black people, but also appear to be opposing racism in different places so that they can garner support from the masses of our people. Now, let's look at what the EFF has been doing. Because remember, we just read that they're about militant economic emancipation. But what are they doing? Instead of dealing with economics, EFF urges other African countries to unite against Uganda's anti-LGBTQAI bill. Right. Now stop. They said that their primary thing that they're worried about is economics. But here they're worried about another country enforcing morality laws that they already have in place. So let's take a look at this article quickly. Says the economic freedom fighters are calling for other African countries to join this cause to have Uganda's anti-homosexuality bill scrapped. In March, the Ugandan parliament passed a bill which will see people who identify under the rainbow banner being subjected to harsh punishments, quote unquote. On Tuesday, the party's leader, Julius Malema, led a march in Uganda to the Ugandan embassy in Pretoria to demand the bill not be signed into law. Malema said that denying a queer people the right to live freely in their country of birth was a human rights violation. He says, let's stand firmly behind the people of Uganda and international solidarity. Museveni will not sign this bill into law. All organizations all over the country and the world must write Museveni and urge him not to sign this into law. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at two clips from Mr. Malema. The first clip is an old clip where we see that he has been pushing homosexuality for a long time. And then we'll come back and talk about that clip and then get into the second clip. So here's the first clip.
She's standing in her grave. Winnie Mandela already gave her a report that in the NEC of the ANC, there is a convicted woman beater who is a leader in the ANC, protected by the so-called New Dawn, sitting with Ramaphosa, sitting next to Ramaphosa. Today, Ramaphosa is going to address in Cape Town and say he's fighting against the abuse of women. When he goes back on Monday, uzohlala nomdumanana. The mdumanana who is beating women, ushaya abafazi. Samfuna lo mdu. Aze kithi. If he feels strong, he must try there at the EFF head office. We'll teach him a lesson. Ushaya abafazi mabathi kuye, how do we gay? Or no, don't call me that. As if there is something wrong with being gay. I mean, umuntu mafika kuwathi, hey Malema uyindoda. Hey, yindoda. Ma we gay, but we gay uthi yes, ngi gay. Ma we lesbian uthi yes, ngi lesbian. Because that is who you are. No one has chosen for you. That's who you are. Be proud of who you are. Don't hide who you are. Ungahambi ushaya abantu laba abathi kuwe yes nje uyimfazi ure ubani umfazi we.
Now, we see, and this was a few years ago. I believe this is right after the transition of Mama Winnie Mandela. He mixed women's rights with the push for homosexuality, which is something that we've seen for years, the connection of feminism with homosexuality. But you frame it in a way of accusing a man of a man I'm not familiar of domestic violence. I don't know if that's true or false. I have no idea. And then next thing you know, you transition from that, and the next thing you know, you're talking about being gay. And be gay, that's who you are. So Mr. Malema has long held this stance, right? But looking at his funders, we now have a better understanding. So we're going to look at his recent clip where he had the protest against the Ugandan bill and see the disrespectful things that he had to say about Mr. Museveni. Let's check out this clip.
Issue. It's a human rights issue. It's a human rights issue. When someone starts by taking away your right to live freely in the country, when someone tries to take away your right to roam freely as a citizen, when they put crimes that you've known committed onto you and take away every right of privacy, where your neighbor and your relative and your friend can report you in for being a queer, for being a homosexual.
Being queer in Uganda is one of the hardest things somebody can be. Being a Ugandan is one thing, and being an LGBTQI member is also another thing. You literally have to live in fear. You literally can't go out there and feel free to dress however you want to dress, to speak however you want to speak, or walk however you want to walk. You are literally stripped of your rights. So it's one of the hardest things.
How are you going to identify that a person is gay? What scientific method are you going to use that she's lesbian? All you're going to do is to look at a person and out of hatred decide this one is gay, this one is lesbian. It cannot be correct. So we are saying to Museveni, leave the people the way they are. It is not our problem. It is not your problem. It is not a problem. What if Museveni is lesbian or gay himself? What if Museveni is going to discover that much later? Because there are people who discover that even when they are older, that actually this is who I am. Uzawuvela umsebenzi kancane kancane uyavela.
And I've received a copy of your memorandum. My duty here is not to respond to them. It's simply to receive. We promise we'll pass your memorandum to the authority responsible for your concern.
Now, we heard that clip and we heard some things that Mr. Malema said that really were quite disrespectful, saying that what if Mr. Museveni is a homosexual? Now, of course, Mr. Museveni is a grown man. He's over 60 years old. He's a family man. He has a wife and children, probably has grandchildren. So to sit around and ask, what if he's gay? It's just completely, it's completely disrespectful, you know? And so it just goes to show the lengths that people who are paid by our enemies will go to disrespect other black people who are trying to take a stand. Now, if that wasn't bad enough that we saw the personal attack on Mr. Museveni by Mr. Malema, we now had this article here where the MP for the EFF, and I got this on the screen, need to get this out of here, says ancestors were gay and slams anti-homosexuality bill. And it says, in light of the anti-homosexuality bill, economic freedom fighters, member of parliament Naledi Mpungosi has blasted Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, saying that he should read to find out about sexuality of Africans before colonialism, boldly proclaiming that ancestors were gay. Now, the fundamental flaw in this logic is that if the ancestors were gay, they would not have reproduced, and thus they would not be ancestors. Pretty simple there. But we're going to watch a clip about this situation and, just get a perspective on this from the people in Azania.
Hello, South Africa. Ancestors were gay, EFF MP slams anti-homosexuality bill. In light of the anti-homosexuality bill, economic freedom fighters, EFF, member of parliament Naledi Mpungosi has blasted Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, saying he should read to find out about the sexuality of Africans before colonialism, boldly claiming ancestors were gay. The party held a picket outside the Ugandan embassy in Pretoria on Tuesday, April 4th, calling for Museveni not to sign the bill into law. On March 21st, the Ugandan parliament overwhelmingly passed the Anti-Homosexuality Bill, 2023, and under the bill's provisions, a person who publicly identifies as LGBTQ+ could face 20 years in prison. If signed by President Yoweri Museveni, the bill will add to the already existing colonial-era ban on homosexuality. The former EFF student activist took to Twitter to say that everything about the bill is colonial. President Museveni and the Parliament of Uganda must pick up books and read rocks if they want to know about the sexuality of Africans pre-colonization. There is nothing African about killing Africans because they are gay. Everything about the anti-homosexuality bill is colonial, she wrote. Furthermore, when responding to a person who commented on her post, the EFF member took it a step further and said ancestors were gay. Then you don't know yourself or your lineage, even your ancestors were gay. Hatred of gays comes from colonial rulers, same as hatred for your skin color, not our esteemed ancestors, she said. This is Leah for the South African. Please subscribe for more news updates.
Now, you notice here, and this has been a thing for a while, the attempt to connect revolutionary nationalism with homosexuality. And it was very disrespectful what she said. And she talking about, oh, read rocks and this and this and that. But again, if we really know our history and we really studied what our enemies wrote about us, they called us every negative thing under the sun. But one of the things they never said we were gay. Again, classical Greek, Roman, this is the classical European histories were obviously and openly homosexual. Meanwhile, when those people came into Africa, they came into Kemet, right? The thing that they noticed the most was the veneration of women and the veneration of the black womb, which was a key core component, and also the great love and nurturing and respect for children. So everything within the concept of ancient African society was based around the family and based around the connection between the man, the woman, and children. This is the base understanding of African culture. This is at a very base level what it means to be African. So for her to say that we were gay in some type of pre-colonial time is patently false. Now, with that being said, I want to take a little bit of a further look into Nathan Kirsh and to see just from a wealth perspective, how wealthy of an individual is this person? And we looked up Nathan Kirsh on Forbes, and we go here and we see that Nathan Kirsh is worth, and this is supposed to be real time, $6.5 billion. And he's number 404 on the Forbes list, meaning that he's in the top 500 people as far as wealth on earth. And this is the person that is funding Mr. Malema and the EFF. Now, if we go down further into some of his holdings, says that Kirsh made his first fortune in his native Swaziland, where he launched a corn milling business in 1958. Says the bulk of Nati Kirsh's fortune comes from U.S.-based Jetro Holdings, which owns restaurant supply stores Jetro Cash and Carry, and Restaurant Depot, which I did not know. Kirsh owns 70% of the company, which supplies wholesale goods to bodegas, small stores, and restaurants in the United States. He expanded into wholesale food distribution in apartheid South Africa, and then into supermarkets and commercial property development. And he is 91 years old and currently resides in Swaziland. So we have a Jewish billionaire who made his money in Azania, in Swaziland, in America, in Israel. And he's funding the economic freedom fighters who are allegedly supposed to be fighting for economic freedom, but you're funded by a billionaire who's worth $6.5 billion. Brothers and sisters, I think that we can see the contradictions here and why Mr. Malema and the EFF are doing their best to push the agendas that they're pushing. And I think I'm going to read this last article before I close out. This is from the Final Call. We're going to read a little bit of this. It says, U.S. anti-Semitism campaign funded by a South African who made his fortune under apartheid. If that's not ironic, says the fight to suppress Palestinian rights and the fight against what is labeled anti-Semitism has strange bedfellows. One source of this apparent link is 92-year-old billionaire Nathan Kirsh, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and ardent supporter of the Zionist state of Israel. His fortune was first developed under South African apartheid. In a piece that appeared in the 2014 edition of the South African-based Daily Maverick about the non-disclosure of campaign financing, Richard Poplar wrote, when Malema, president of the Economic Freedom Fighters, stood before his faithful in Thokoza on Sunday and accused the DA Democratic Alliance Party of accepting money from Israel, what exactly did he mean? Poplar continued, we know that one of the DA's biggest supporters, as opposed to funders, is Nathan Kirsh, a South African-born, Swazi-naturalized billionaire real estate magnate. Kirsh owns a little bit of everything everywhere and a whole lot of Mago security systems in Israel, as we discussed earlier. Mago is a high-tech, vastly unloved outfit listed on the NASDAQ and Tel Aviv stock exchanges. It is responsible for the West Bank security apartheid fence, again, as we discussed before. Yes, it's the same Nathan Kirsh that built electrified fences to keep Palestinians in, and also bankrolls Shine a Light campaign, whose objective is to keep criticisms of Israel to a minimum. The campaign includes billboards and public service announcements airing during some of television's most popular programs, including Today, Saturday Night Live, according to the Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle. In fact, in one TV ad, the campaign uses a very attractive Black American woman to educate viewers on what criticisms of Israel are viable and which are not. This is like a thief defining his crime. In this case, defining the criticisms so that the American public doesn't have to. Shine a Light was created in 2023 by the Kirsh Foundation, reported the Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle. In a recent article published in the New York-based Jewish Forward, Shine a Light was said to be founded amid the fallout of the May 2021 escalation in violence across Israel and the Gaza Strip. The article continued, Shine a Light defines some popular forms of Israel criticism as anti-Semitism. Several large progressive Jewish groups are notably absent from the coalition, underscoring the challenge of pitching a big tent at a time when the Jewish community has been divided over how to quote-unquote defend itself. Nonetheless, Shine a Light has managed to assemble an elusive coalition, winning the support of every major Jewish denomination and sometimes rivals like the Anti-Defamation League and the American Jewish Committee. According to the Jewish Forward, Shine a Light grew out of a member of the Kirsh family's concern that anti-Semitism, stemming from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, had reached a fever pitch in the United States following the 2021 violence, a feeling echoed by numerous Jewish groups the family already supported. Shine a Light, as well as the ADL's new Entertainment Leadership Council to Fight Anti-Semitism, may be no more than public relations. Not that anti-Semitism does not exist, but at what cost do we give up our First Amendment rights? Kirsh's daughter, Wendy Fisher, of the A4 Arts Foundation, which is seed funded by the Kirsh Family Foundation, is an old hand at using art as soft power to promote Israel. A case in point, according to South African news publication Mail and Guardian, beyond the money through Mago, the Kirsh family influence seems ideologically aligned to and invested in the Zionist state project. Why do we say this? Fisher, an artist and quote-unquote philanthropist who also sits on the board of the Guggenheim Museum and is a donor to Zeitz Mocha, is on the board of the Israeli Museum, and she co-chairs the British Friends of Arts Museum of Israel organization. There is no way of estimating lives lost or the heightened terror experienced by Palestinians under the various iterations of this apparent and well-funded Kirsh-engineered historic dynamic. So, brothers and sisters, as we see, Mr. Kirsh is well connected and has his hands in a lot of different things and is able to influence a lot of different things. So when we look at people like Julius Malema and the EFF, and we look at people, we have to look at them in the same way that we look at Black Lives Matter. These are obviously astroturf movements founded by small hats to cause confusion between Black people, whites, Palestinians, and others, while the Zionists maintain control over large parts of economies in America, Azania, and other places on earth. This just goes to show that Julius Malema and the EFF are yet again an example of controlled opposition and bought and paid for Negro leadership. With that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for watching this video. I thank you all for all your support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This has been another Radical Report. With that, I say, Abibi Fahodie and straight Black pride.